My name is Callie Merritt. I'm 31 years old. And 3 weeks ago, I still thought my life was the kind of life people stop noticing once it's settled. 4 years together, 8 months engaged, a wedding planned for next spring that already had deposits attached to it like little handcuffs. We lived in a decent house in the suburbs, quiet streets, trimmed lawns, neighbors who waved like they were practicing being normal. I worked from home most days. My fiancé, Gavin Cross, worked in marketing, always on, always talking in bright, confident sentences like he was selling the world to itself. He traveled occasionally for conferences, nothing unusual. Normal life, boring even, until it wasn't. It started on a Tuesday afternoon. I was finishing up emails when my phone buzzed with a Facebook notification. Gavin posted something and tagged me. That wasn't unusual. He loved social media, little couple posts, behind-the-scenes life updates, curated moments that made us look like a lifestyle brand instead of two people who argued about laundry and forgot to buy dish soap. So I opened it without thinking. And my stomach dropped so fast it felt like my body missed a step. Selling her 2019 Mustang GT for $5,000. Needs to go today. Pick up in 1 hour. First come, first served. Help a girl out. My car. My Mustang. The one I saved for 3 years to buy. The one I babied like it was made of glass. The one worth at least $35,000 on a bad day. Listed for $5,000 like it was a used couch. And the worst part? I was sitting right there in our house when he posted it, meaning he did it knowing I existed in the same zip code. He hadn't said a word to me. Not a, hey, quick question. Not a warning. Not even a lie. I stared at the screen for maybe 30 seconds trying to make sense of it. Was his account hacked? Was this some kind of joke I wasn't getting? Was I about to be the punchline of a video he'd send his friends? Then I saw the comments rolling in. OMG, is everything okay? Girl, what happened? I'll PM you. And one that made my skin prickle. LOL. If this is real, I'm coming right now. My hands started shaking. Not dramatic shaking, not movie shaking, just this ugly little tremor in my fingers like my nervous system was trying to warn me before my brain caught up. I scrolled back up. He'd tagged me. He'd tagged me like he was proud. My thoughts went weirdly calm. Clinical, like the part of me that handles emergencies had climbed into the driver's seat. I typed a comment. Sold, I'll take it. Then I grabbed my phone and called the non-emergency police line. Even saying the words out loud sounded surreal. Hi, my fiancé is attempting to sell my vehicle without my permission. The title is in my name. I need an officer present to prevent theft. The dispatcher didn't laugh, didn't sigh. She just said, surprisingly gentle, okay, stay on the line. An officer can be there within 20 minutes. When I hung up, I went straight to our bedroom, opened the filing cabinet where we kept house documents, and pulled out the title. My name. Only my name. Gavin still wasn't home. That morning, he'd kissed my cheek and said he had back-to-back meetings until at least 6. It was barely 3. I checked his post again. 43 comments already. And then I saw one that made everything snap into focus like a camera lens. A guy named Derek wrote, "On my way now, can bring cash." I replied before I could talk myself out of it. Great, I'm the owner. I'll be here. Then I sat on the front porch and waited, title in my hand like a weapon made of paper. The police arrived first. Officer Martinez, mid-40s, tired eyes, professional posture, like he'd seen too many versions of people doing unbelievable things to each other. I showed him the title, explained the situation again. He nodded slowly, like this wasn't even top 10 weirdest thing he'd dealt with that week. I've seen crazier, he said, but this is bold. We waited together. 15 minutes later, Derek pulled up in a Honda Accord, practically bouncing as he got out. He pointed at my Mustang in the driveway like it was a prize. Hey, this for real? $5,000 for that Mustang? I kept my voice steady. The post is real, but I'm the legal owner, and I didn't authorize any sale. His face fell so fast I almost felt bad. Oh, so it's not for sale. I'm sorry you drove out here. He looked annoyed, but then he shrugged like life had trained him to expect scams. Yeah, figured it was too good to be true. Have a good one. He left. Officer Martinez turned slightly toward me, eyebrow raised. So, you want to explain what's actually going on here? My throat felt tight. I genuinely don't know, I said, but I'm about to find out. 20 minutes later, Gavin's car pulled up, and I watched his face through the windshield as he registered the scene. Me on the porch, a cop in the driveway, my phone in my hand. He parked on the street instead of the driveway, like distance would soften consequences. He got out slowly. What's going on? He called, forcing confusion into his voice. Why are the police here? Officer Martinez stepped forward, calm. Are you okay, ma'am? Is this your residence? Yes, Gavin said quickly. We live here together. I'm her fiancé. The way he said it, like the words should protect him, made something cold crawl up my spine. I held up my phone with his post on the screen. Want to explain this? His eyes went wide, then narrowed. And then, like I was the unreasonable one, he laughed. Oh my God, he said. You called the cops? Are you serious right now? You tried to sell my car, I said, voice tight, without permission, for a fraction of what it's worth. He turned to Officer Martinez, gesturing like he wanted an audience. This is insane. We're engaged. We share everything. I was trying to help us. Officer Martinez didn't react to the performance. The title is solely in her name, sir. Do you have any legal claim to the vehicle? Gavin's jaw tightened. We're getting married. What's hers is mine. Not yet, Officer Martinez said flatly, and not without her consent. Did you have permission to sell the car? For a second, Gavin looked like he might argue. Then he looked at me, and something shifted in his eyes. Something colder than anger. Fine, he said. No, but I had a good reason. He pulled out his phone and started tapping fast, fingers a little shaky now that his charm wasn't working. Then he thrust the screen toward me. A payment app request. $25,000 to someone named Blake. Memo. For everything we talked about. I stared at it, my brain refusing the shape of it. I needed the down payment today, Gavin said, voice sharper. Blake's giving me an amazing investment opportunity. His startup is about to explode, and he offered me a chance to get in early. I was going to surprise you. Blake, I repeated slowly. Gavin nodded like it was obvious. Blake, from work. The guy I went to that conference with in Denver. A memory flashed. Him coming home from that trip with a new energy, talking about leveling up, about being around people who think bigger. He'd said it like an insult to our life. It's not like that, he added quickly, reading my face. He's a colleague. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream. I just said, so you tried to sell my car in secret for way under value to wire money to a man I've never met because you thought I'd overthink it. He flinched like I'd slapped him with the truth. It's not stealing, he snapped. We're engaged. Officer Martinez exhaled, the patience thinning. Legally speaking, sir, it is attempted theft. She could press charges. Gavin's face went pale. He looked at me like I was supposed to rescue him from consequences. You wouldn't, he said quietly. And I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in months. Not the man I thought I was marrying. Not the man who once promised me we'd never become strangers living in the same house. Just a man standing in my driveway, trying to sell my safety for his fantasy. How long have you been planning this? I asked. It came up yesterday, he said too fast. The opportunity closes today, and I knew you'd overthink, I finished for him. His eyes flashed. Yeah, overthink. You always do this. You analyze everything to death. I was trying to help us. Do you have any proof this is legitimate? I asked. Paperwork? Contracts? Anything? He hesitated. Blake said he'd send everything after the transfer. Officer Martinez actually laughed, short and bitter. That's not how legitimate investments work, the officer said. I felt tired in a way that went past exhaustion, like something inside me had finally stopped fighting to keep the illusion alive. I looked at Gavin. I want you to take that post down, right now, I said, and I want you to pack a bag and stay somewhere else tonight. His mouth opened. You're kicking me out over this? You tried to steal from me, I said, voice low. To give $25,000 to a man you traveled with, without asking, without proof, without thinking about what happens if it's fake. He looked at Officer Martinez like a kid searching for a loophole. Can she do that? Officer Martinez pointed toward the house. It's her name on the deed? I nodded. The house was mine from before we met. We'd kept finances mostly separate, at least on paper. Gavin's face changed again. Tears vanished like a switch flipped. Fine, he said coldly. But this isn't over. He deleted the post while we watched. Then he stormed inside, threw things into a bag, and left without another word. Officer Martinez handed me his card before he got in his cruiser. Call if he comes back and things escalate, he said. And keep that title somewhere safe. When he drove away, the silence in the driveway felt unnatural. My Mustang sat there like nothing had happened, like it hadn't almost been sold out from under me. I went inside, locked the door, and stood in the hallway for a long time, still holding the title. Then I did the thing I swore I'd never do, the thing I always judged other people for. I opened my laptop and logged into Gavin's accounts. Because months ago, during one of those we should have nothing to hide conversations, he'd given me his passwords freely, like transparency was the same as loyalty. His messages loaded, And there was Blake, everywhere. Not explicitly romantic, not enough to scream affair, but the tone was wrong. Too familiar. Too many late-night exchanges. Too many lines that sounded like anticipation. Can't wait to see you again. We'll talk soon. Don't tell her yet. Trust me. This is the move. The Denver conference had been 3 months ago. They'd stayed at the same hotel. And suddenly the Facebook post didn't feel like a wild mistake. It felt like the first time his plan had touched daylight. And I had the sickest feeling that this wasn't the worst part yet. I didn't sleep. Not really. I did that thing where you lie in bed with your eyes closed, pretending you're resting while your brain runs laps like it's trying to outrun its own fear. Every time the house creaked, my body stiffened. Every time a car passed outside, I wondered if it was Gavin circling back, deciding he had a right to come home because he'd said the word fiancé enough times. By sunrise, the quiet felt hostile. I made coffee I didn't want, stared at my phone like it might bite, and kept replaying the same moment on the porch. Gavin laughing when he saw the police, like my boundaries were a joke and my panic was entertainment. What scared me wasn't just that he'd tried to sell my Mustang. It was how easy it had been for him, how practiced. Like he'd already rehearsed the story where I'm the obstacle and he's the hero saving our future. Around 9:10 a.m., the doorbell rang. Not a knock, not a hesitant little tap. A doorbell. Polite, confident, like whoever was outside assumed they'd be welcomed. I looked through the peephole. Gavin stood there with his mother. He wasn't holding flowers. He wasn't alone. He wasn't even trying to look ashamed. And his mother, Marilyn Cross, had 2 coffees in a cardboard carrier and a calm expression that belonged to someone who believed she could talk reality into changing. For a second, I considered not opening the door at all. But I also knew, if I didn't, they'd use it as evidence that I was being dramatic. If I did, I could end it cleanly, face to face, while I still had my spine intact. I opened the door, but only enough for the chain to catch. Marilyn smiled. That tight, polished smile she always used at holidays, the one that said, "I'm being nice, so you owe me compliance." "Good morning, Callie," she said, holding up the coffees like peace offerings. "We brought you something warm. We need to talk like adults." Gavin stood slightly behind her shoulder, like a kid bringing his mom to the principal's office. "I'm not letting you in," I said. Gavin's mouth twitched, annoyed. "Seriously?" Marilyn's smile didn't move. "Honey, no one's here to fight. Gavin told me everything. He made a mistake in judgment, but his heart was in the right place." "A mistake," I repeated. My voice was calm, but my hands were still shaking slightly. "He tried to sell my car without permission." Marilyn tilted her head. "That's a harsh way to frame it." "It's the legal way," I said. Gavin stepped forward, like he couldn't stand letting her do the talking. "I told you, Blake needed the down payment today. It was time-sensitive." "Time-sensitive scams usually are," I said. Marilyn's eyes narrowed, just a fraction. "Callie, you and Gavin are engaged. You're building a life together. Couples share resources. He wasn't doing this to hurt you. He was trying to secure your future." I stared at her. This was the part I'd always hated about Marilyn, how she could make something ugly sound virtuous just by saying it in a soft voice. "He tried to sell property that isn't his," I said, "for $5,000. Marilyn waved a hand gently, like I was fixating on the wrong detail. "The amount isn't the point." "No," I said. "The point is that he did it behind my back." Gavin's face tightened, "Because you would have said no." "And that," I said, "is the point." Marilyn's smile started to crack at the edges. "Don't punish him for being ambitious. Men feel pressure, Callie. He's trying to step up." "By stealing from me," I said. Gavin threw his hands up. "Can you stop calling it stealing? We're getting married. What's yours is mine." My stomach turned. It wasn't new, that sentence. Not exactly. He'd said versions of it before, always joking, always wrapped in charm. But yesterday, in front of Officer Martinez, it wasn't a joke. It was a belief. Marilyn leaned in slightly, lowering her voice like she was offering wisdom. "Marriage is partnership. You're acting like you're still single." I laughed once. It came out sharp and humorless. "I am still single," I said, "because I'm not marrying someone who thinks love gives him a right to my things." Gavin's eyes flashed. "So that's it? 4 years and you're throwing it away because I tried to help us?" I kept my gaze on him. "If you were helping us, you would have asked." He opened his mouth, closed it. Marilyn stepped in smoothly, like she'd been waiting for that exact pause. "Sweetheart, Gavin told me the opportunity is real. A startup in stealth mode. That's normal nowadays. Everything's quiet until launch." I felt my pulse steady in a strange way, because this was where they were going. This wasn't a visit to apologize. This was a visit to rewrite. "Okay," I said, as evenly as possible. "What's the startup called?" Gavin blinked. I told you. No, I said. You told me Blake's name. What's the company called? His eyes flicked sideways, just for a second, toward his mother. A little check-in. A little help me. Then he said, TechFlow Solutions. Marilyn nodded quickly. Yes, TechFlow. I looked it up. It's... You didn't, I cut in. She paused. I pulled out my phone and typed the name into Google right there, standing with the chain still latched. Nothing. No website, no LinkedIn page, no articles, no business filings, no stealth mode teaser page, not even a dead domain. Just empty space. I turned the screen toward them. This company doesn't exist. Marilyn's face did something I'd never seen before. It flickered. Not anger, not disappointment. Fear. Gavin snatched his phone out and typed fast. It's in stealth mode. Blake said, a stealth mode company still exists, I said. It has investors, legal filings, employees, something. This has nothing. Marilyn's coffee carrier dipped slightly in her hands. Gavin, she said, and for the first time her voice lost its certainty. What is she talking about? Gavin's jaw flexed. He didn't answer her. He looked at me instead, and suddenly the irritation in his expression changed into something sharper, like I'd embarrassed him. You always do this, he said quietly. You always have to prove you're right. I felt my throat tighten, not with sadness, with clarity. You tried to sell my car, I said, to wire money to a man who might not even exist in the way you think he does. And you're mad at me because Google worked. Marilyn tried to recover. She lifted her chin, smoothing the moment into something manageable. Maybe you two need time apart to think clearly. This is a stressful season. Weddings make everyone emotional. I'm not emotional, I said. I'm done. Gavin stared. What? I'm ending the engagement, I said. You can pick up your remaining things this weekend when I'm not here. Marilyn's eyes widened. Callie, don't be rash. 4 years. You're right, I said softly. 4 years. And he still thought it was okay to take from me without asking. Gavin stepped forward until his face was close to the crack in the door. Please, he said, and the word sounded like it had been pulled out of him with effort. Just talk to me without the attitude. I messed up. I panicked. I wanted to make something happen for us. I could see the version of him that used to work on me. The earnest eyes, the softened voice, the careful vulnerability. But it was ruined now, because behind it, I could still hear his laugh from yesterday. The one that said, You called the cops? Seriously? You didn't panic, I said. You planned. You posted. You timed it. You made it pick up in 1 hour, so I'd have no room to stop it unless I went nuclear. Marilyn's mouth tightened. Gavin's eyes went wet. Real tears this time, or at least convincing ones. I love you, he said. I was doing it for our future. I swallowed the lump in my throat and let myself feel the grief, because it was grief, even if I was angry. Then I said, if you loved me, you wouldn't have been willing to gamble my security without my consent. Gavin's tears spilled faster. So you're just done? Like I'm nothing? No, I said quietly. You're not nothing. You're just not safe. Silence. Marilyn lowered the coffee carrier like she'd forgotten why she'd brought it. Finally, she said, Fine. If you insist on space, we'll respect that. But you should know, you're making a mistake. I held her gaze. The mistake was thinking love means I should tolerate theft. Gavin's expression hardened mid-tear, like something snapped inside him. The softness evaporated. This isn't over, he muttered. And that sentence, the exact same one he'd said last night, landed in my chest like a threat. Marilyn turned him gently by the arm. Come on. They left. I watched through the window as they walked back to Gavin's car. Marilyn said something I couldn't hear. Gavin shook his head once, violently, like he was refusing reality. When they drove away, my house didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a battlefield that had gone quiet only because the next wave was gathering. I locked the door again, checked every window. Then I went to my laptop, because I needed to know how deep this went. I logged into Gavin's social accounts, the ones he'd handed me months ago during a nothing-to-hide conversation that suddenly felt like a performance in hindsight. At first, I told myself I was only looking for evidence about Blake. But once you start pulling a thread, you don't get to decide what comes loose. His messages with Blake were still there, like a trail of footprints leading straight off a cliff. Not romantic, not obviously, but intimate in a way that made my skin crawl. Inside jokes, late-night voice notes, long paragraphs about breaking free, going all in, being seen. And then I saw something that made my stomach drop again. A message from Gavin to Blake, dated 2 nights ago. She'll freak out if I tell her. I'll handle it my way. Blake responded. Good. Don't let her kill your momentum. You're not her employee. My fingers went cold. Not her employee. Like I was someone who had to be managed. I kept scrolling. And then I found a name I hadn't expected to see. Sierra Vale, Gavin's ex-girlfriend. The one he always described as crazy, dramatic, toxic. The one Marilyn still followed on Instagram, still liked posts from, still called sweet in that way that always felt like a warning. Sierra had messaged Gavin last week. If she doesn't support your vision, she's dead weight. You know what to do. Gavin had replied, I know. I stared at those 2 words until the letters blurred. Because suddenly it wasn't just about Blake. It was about the fact that my fiancé had people whispering in his ear, and he listened. And the scariest part? He'd been practicing for a while. By noon, my eyes were burning and my chest felt tight. But I didn't stop. Because now I needed proof. Not just for my sanity, for my safety. And right as I was about to close the laptop, my phone buzzed. A message request on Facebook. From a woman named Jessica Harlow. Someone I recognized vaguely from company dinners and holiday parties. The preview line made my blood run cold. Hey, I don't know if this is my place, but I heard you and Gavin broke up. I think you should know something about Blake. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering, heart thudding, because whatever this was, it was about to get worse. I stared at the message from Jessica Harlow for a full 30 seconds before opening it. Not because I didn't want to know. Because some part of me already did. When you've spent 4 years slowly learning someone's blind spots, you start to recognize the shape of disaster before it speaks. I typed back. Hi, yes, we broke up. What's going on? 3 dots appeared almost immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, her message came through. I'm really sorry. I've been debating whether to reach out, but after what I heard, I don't think staying quiet is the right thing anymore. My chest tightened. Blake was fired 2 months ago. I sat back in my chair. Fired. For what? I typed. Her reply came fast now, like the dam had broken. HR kept it quiet, but he was running a romance scam on a client. Convinced her to leave her husband and invest in a fake startup. The husband worked in finance. He figured it out and reported him. Blake was let go, but charges weren't filed because the client didn't want the attention. I felt nauseous. Not shocked. Just sick in that slow, spreading way, like your body knew before your brain finished the sentence. I called her. She picked up on the second ring. Hey, she said softly. I wasn't sure you'd want to talk. I do, I said. Please don't sugarcoat anything. She exhaled. Okay. Blake talked about Gavin constantly, said he was hungry, ready to break out. We all thought it was weird. He framed himself like a mentor. Did anyone think they were sleeping together? I asked. There was a pause. I don't know, Jessica said carefully. Nothing explicit, but they spent a lot of time together. More than was normal. Late nights, private conversations. Blake liked to blur lines. I closed my eyes. And the startup? I asked. There is no startup, she said. That's what he told the client, too. Same script. Stealth mode. Once in a lifetime window. Don't tell anyone yet. My fingers curled into my palm. Did Gavin know? I asked. Jessica hesitated. I don't think he knew about the firing, but he wanted to believe. Blake knew how to spot people like that. People like that. After we hung up, I sat there in silence for a long time. Then I opened my phone and called the detective unit. I explained everything calmly. Facts only. Attempted fraud. A false investment opportunity. A documented attempt to liquidate property for cash transfer. The detective listened, then said, No money changed hands, so it limits charges. But we can open an investigation. You did the right thing. I didn't feel righteous. I felt tired. But something else, too. Relief. Because even if nothing came of it legally, I was no longer carrying this alone. Gavin found out about the report that night. At 11:07 p.m., someone started pounding on my door. Not ringing. Not knocking. Pounding. I checked the camera first. It was him. I didn't open the door right away. You reported Blake? He shouted through the wood. Are you out of your mind? I opened it just enough to speak. He's a scammer, I said. You almost gave him $25,000. I did you a favor. His face was flushed, eyes wild. He's my friend. He was helping me. He got fired for running the same scam on someone else, I said. 2 months ago. That's not true, he snapped. You're lying. Call Jessica, I said. Ask her. He hesitated just a second, then pulled out his phone, put it on speaker. She answered, and confirmed everything. When the call ended, Gavin just stood there. The anger drained out of him like a punctured tire. I didn't know, he whispered. I know, I said. But you were still willing to sell my car, I continued. You were still willing to gamble my security. That's the problem, Gavin. Not Blake. You. He didn't argue. He didn't cry. He just left. The next morning, I pawned the ring. 3 weeks later, Blake had left the state. No charges yet. but I was told his name had come up in other cases. Gavin moved back in with his parents, lost his job after putting in notice. Apparently, he'd planned to work for the startup full-time. Now he had nothing. I sit in my Mustang sometimes, just breathing. Grateful, because if we'd gotten married, he would have had legal access to everything. My house, my savings, my future. I'm not angry anymore, just tired, and grateful I saw who he really was before it was too late. 3 weeks passed. Not the dramatic kind of 3 weeks people imagine after a breakup. No sobbing on the bathroom floor every night. No revenge glow-ups. No long speeches about closure. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after your nervous system realizes the threat is gone, but your body hasn't quite caught up yet. Gavin moved back in with his parents. I heard it through mutual friends first, how he'd shown up with trash bags and boxes, how Marilyn had gone into full caretaker mode, how she told anyone who would listen that her son had been misled and emotionally taken advantage of. That part almost made me laugh. Almost. What didn't make me laugh was learning that Gavin had already given notice at work. Apparently, he'd planned it for weeks. Timed it perfectly with Blake's launch window. He was supposed to be free, available, to jump into the startup full-time the moment the investment cleared. Except the investment never happened, and the startup never existed. So now he was unemployed. 32. Back in his childhood bedroom, living under the same roof as a mother who alternated between blaming me and blaming herself, depending on the day. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow. The ring sat on my dresser for a while. I tried to pretend it was just an object. Metal, stone, sunk cost. But it carried too much weight. Too many versions of a future that almost happened. So one afternoon, I drove to a pawn shop 15 minutes away, one Gavin and I had passed 100 times without noticing. I didn't tell them the story. I just slid the ring across the counter. They gave me about 60% of what he paid. I didn't argue. I didn't want it in my house anymore. Blake disappeared. That part came from the detective, who called to give me a non-update update. No charges had been filed, yet, because no money had changed hands in my case. But his name had surfaced in other reports. Similar patterns, similar scripts. Once he realized law enforcement was paying attention, he left the state. Vanished. Gavin texted me twice during that 3rd week. The first message was an apology, long, emotional, filled with phrases like, "I lost myself and I was under pressure and I never meant to hurt you." I didn't respond. The second message came 3 days later. "I hope someday you understand why I did what I did." I blocked his number after that. What surprised me most wasn't losing him. It was how many people quietly sided with me. Jessica told me later that several people at Gavin's company had been uncomfortable with his relationship with Blake but hadn't known how to speak up. That Gavin had talked about needing capital and making bold moves in ways that made people uneasy. Apparently, he'd been rehearsing this future long before I ever saw that Facebook post. One night, after a long shower and an even longer stare at the ceiling, I walked out to the driveway and sat in my Mustang. I didn't turn it on. I just sat there, hands resting on the steering wheel, breathing. The leather still smelled the same. The world outside the windshield was still exactly where I'd left it. Nothing had been taken from me. And that realization hit harder than anything else. If I hadn't seen that post, if I hadn't trusted my instincts instead of my history, if I'd been 6 weeks further down the road instead of 6 weeks away from a wedding, he would have had access to everything. My house, my savings, my credit, my safety. He would have given it all to Blake, or someone like him, without asking, convinced it was for us. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not even bitter. I'm just deeply, profoundly grateful that the truth showed itself before it could hide behind legal paperwork and shared last names. That stupid Facebook post was the best, worst thing that ever happened to me. Because it didn't just save my car. It saved my life from becoming someone else's gamble.